Welcome to the breakout sessions for Enterprise Integration Summit. This is the session for AppFusions, and with us we have two terrific speakers, Diane Hinchcliffe and Ellen Feeney. Welcome, folks.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Good morning, Vance.
For his part, Diane Hinchcliffe is Vice President and Principal Analyst of Constellation Research. He is a thought leader, as many of you may know, in integration-led IT and business transformation technologies. And lately, Diane has focused on an emerging new sector called digital workplace, and we'll hear about that during our session this morning. With expertise in that area, along with collaboration, APIs, and middleware, Diane is also an executive fellow at the Tuck Center for Digital Strategies. And for her part, Ellen Feeney, CEO of AppFusions, she also is a pioneer in the digital workplace space, devising a solution that works for your company's workforce, business managers, IT, and partner ecosystems. Well, here, Ellen's philosophy, the key to AppFusions' approach to tackling this issue is an easy-to-adapt platform that brings together hundreds of critical business systems that often don't work well together. Ellen also brings expertise in integration, processes, and UX, which will also be on display in their session, Trends and Solutions to the Integrated Digital Workplace Problem. You know, SaaS apps and other business-critical technologies are creating a bit of chaos within many of today's companies, large and small. And in today's session, Diane and Ellen will look at how integration, smart search, real-time, and event-triggered business flows are combining to deliver a more seamless, frictionless, impactful, and notably trustworthy working environment. This is something that AppFusions calls the Digital Workplace Platform, and we'll learn some eye-opening business use cases as well as get a tour of AppFusions' thoughtful and progressive architecture. And just a quick reminder before I hand it over, you can download today's slides if you haven't already done so. I really recommend it. Just click the button in the viewing area. You'll see in that same region that Diane and Ellen have brought some other great downloads for us, valuable white papers and other resources. Also available without any extra registration required, so feel free. And we love your questions and try to make this interactive. So send your comments in the submit a question box, and we'll make sure that Diane and Ellen get them. And now, folks, let me turn it back to you and tell us about AppFusions and the trends and solutions to the integrated digital workplace problem.
Great. Well, thanks very much for that great introduction. So we're going to be talking for the next little while about an important and new emerging approach for creating a more organized and coherent digital workplace, known as the integrated digital workplace. And we'll explain first what the industry trends and the business value is in terms of how this is evolving, how this is shaking out. And then Ellen will cover one example of how an integrated digital workplace works with the Aloha platform. All right, so the leading challenge that we're seeing in organizations is that when it comes to IT and it comes to digital tools that people use to get their jobs done, is that they just don't understand the full scope and the full capabilities of the tools that they have in front of them. And it's often too hard to either reach those tools or to connect all the different data that they have. And so digital proliferation is really causing a fragmentation in the work that we do, in the tools that we apply, and the artifacts that we create. So a given business process to create a report, pulling from different databases and data sources and from different colleagues, might require you to touch 5, 10, 15 different tools. And it takes time. It's time consuming and it's difficult to do. And more tools are being required to do our daily jobs. And so this forces workers to put a lot more effort into manually integrating not just their workplace, but all their data and everything that they do. And so the average worker is taking up to a day, a week in dealing with all of these different applications, all of this different data. And so there's been a push for what if we could create a better, more holistic way to present that digital workplace. So we see that most organizations have a couple of preferred platforms that they use for communications and collaboration, and they often have a set of productivity tools. And so the typical organization has a set of official tools, and there's usually some other tools around the edges or other tools that are very different and used in different divisions or different departments, but then still come up in usage. Where most organizations are heading is in this much more unmanaged space where they still have those official tools, but as more departments bring in mobile applications, software as a service, and other applications, officially or unofficially, we're getting this unmanaged workspace with data in different silos, applications here and there, often used for the same thing. What if we could create a more optimal workplace that says, let's embrace that. We actually want all that innovation, all these applications to be used. They provide value, but let's organize them a bit better. Let's structure the experience so they're more usable and more manageable. So recent data backs up a lot of this in terms of there's a business motivation for making this happen. What is really causing low productivity? A recent study from the Clarius Group showed that users are just unsure how to use all this tech that we're handing to them. So they're typically given a desktop computer and a mobile device loaded with all of these applications that don't really fit together, aren't part of an organized process, that don't really talk to each other, and then we expect them to be productive. And the cost of this is enormous in terms of people waiting for information, things aren't coordinated well, they're getting unwanted communications, and there are other barriers to collaboration. And so if we look at the time for productive work, there isn't a lot of it when you have all of these issues in place, right? So we just have a lot more IT and a lot more data and a lot more touch points now. So it's creating this growing motivation to say, let's reduce the cost of that overhead. We want to address those barriers to an effective modern digital workplace, which is simply more complicated than it has been in the past. We do have a pretty good sense nowadays on what are the moving parts in collaboration. This is one of my famous diagrams that kind of has maybe too much information, but it does show that if this was easy, it would have been solved a long time ago. So if you look at the content and the information at the bottom, that's what we're really trying to get to, is the knowledge. And we have a variety of technologies that access all of that. And then we want to be able to use our business data in the context of collaborating with our coworkers, working with our teams, working with our customers. And that's for the pieces that we don't have. Workers are often the point of integration. They're copying and pasting data from one application to another. They're importing a file here or syncing it there. So the information is fragmented across all of these systems. It isn't integrated. It isn't live a lot of the time, or they have to manually context switch. It's not uncommon to find an average enterprise worker with 20, 30, 40 open windows of which they're all trying to conduct one single process. We realize that there's a better way of doing that. The other major advance in the last few years is not using generic collaboration tools or digital workplace models, but actually aiming them at specific business challenges, at what we call use cases. So this is from my research and working with a lot of people in the industry in the digital workplace. These are all the different types of things that we see these tools being used for. So at the very bottom are foundational things like search and discovery, team collaboration, publishing and consuming news and information, capturing knowledge, making sense of everything that you've learned, things like that. But in recent years, we've seen the move towards situating these tools to enable high value processes, things around the sales process, which that fuels most organizations. So identifying leads and prospects collaboratively in these tools, so working on RFPs together, dealing with contracts and approvals, which is a very time-consuming process in many sales organizations. What if we can improve those high-value activities specifically? We know that they're common in every organization, but the tools are often too generic to really support that. So in addition to bringing all the applications together into a more unified experience, what if we can make sure that they are connected together in a lightweight fashion to address these high-value use cases? And so we see this maturity model. We see more and more organizations in my work who are saying, all right, let's get the tools out there, then let's start situating them, ensuring they're being used to improve specific activities in marketing and sales and customer service and in top-level institutional practices, things like project management and financial planning and dealing with the supply chain. All these are very high value functions that generic tools can help with, but if we're forcing users to figure out how to use a large set of tools to carry out these functions and we give them no guidance on how to do that, no blueprint for which they should connect these applications together, then it doesn't happen in a consistent fashion. People don't know how to do it, especially as they come on board. So the idea is that a more integrated and holistic digital workplace can address both of these challenges, bringing together a more consistent experience and aiming it at these high-value use cases. So the premise here, and where we see the industry going, I was just recently talking to the CIO of Accenture, who views one of his top priorities is taking the 100 most common processes in the organization and ensuring that the digital workplace is designed to make those processes easy, right? So Accenture is one of the largest organizations in the world, and I'm seeing this happen consistently in other companies. Things like organizations like Barclays Bank, Coca-Cola, and others are actively starting to do this at a strategic level. So this is something that is happening in the industry. So the idea is we want to bring everything together to work seamlessly as possible. There is no silver bullet, right? So even with application integration, it still takes effort to bring these pieces together and ensure people have the skills and know how to use it, but it's usually much lower than letting people try and figure it all out on their own or providing minimal guidance. But the idea is we want to bring all the people together in the platform, their applications and the data that they use out of their silos, and be able to use them dynamically in their activity streams or dynamically in a portal construct that allows them to carry out these processes in a more straightforward and prescribed fashion, and where they don't have to provide it and track all the context mentally, that the tool has some basic understanding of what processes you're carrying out, what apps and data will carry that out, and give you the kind of guardrails to ensure that you're doing the best way, the standard way inside the organization. So what this is developing is a truly integrated and more collaborative digital workplace where we have that consistent place where these applications can be used. The user experience doesn't vary nearly as much as when you have independent applications, that the applications are surfaced where they need to be. Everything is kept secure in this hub. It's much more contextual. It's much more consistent. The friction has been removed from the processes. Ideally, it's searchable so that when you're trying to find information across not just your collaboration tool, but also all the underlying applications that you can do that, and that you don't have to leave it for most common activities, whether that's communications or working with systems of record, like your ERP system, and that it's available on all the digital touch points that you use on a daily basis in a consistent way. Now you have one place to get things done, you've got reduced duplication, and you have higher productivity, and it addresses specifically all of those costly barriers that we talked about before, and reduces unnecessary and duplicative notifications, for example, because again, you have context and you know what they've already seen across all these applications, just as an example. So what kind of benefits do we actually see from this? So I've been involved in the last half decade in much more integrated digital workplace efforts, typically based on an enterprise social network. That seems to be the best place to locate this integrated digital workplace. It's where the collaboration happens. It's the system of engagement. And then you can draw in the system of record, which is the other half of the IT equation, that normally you have to separate all your collaborative work and communication about that work into the other tools where you record that work. And this brings them all together into one canvas. We see that things like it's 30% more efficient on average to find knowledge. This is data from McKinsey & Company, cross-checked by Frost & Sullivan, from Deloitte, from MIT Sloan Management Review. We've summarized. After you've rolled this out widely for a couple of years, these are the average benefits that organizations are seeing. 25% higher productivity. That's a very big one. Finding experts, reduced travel costs, faster time to market, better customer retention because your employees can spend time with customers as opposed to doing all those things that was hindering them before in finding information and locating experts and connecting knowledge or information from one app to the other. Even innovation's more successful on average, and worker satisfaction is higher too. So employee engagement is noticeably higher with an easier to use and a more supporting and enabling digital workplace. So that shouldn't really be a surprise. And with that, you get a whirlwind overview of the strategic trends happening in the digital workplace arena, where we see integrated digital workplace emerging as a natural kind of response to the unnecessary complexity we've had before and the need to enable workers to work more efficiently. Now, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Ellen, who's going to actually take you through what this really looks like. What are the details of creating an integrated digital workplace? How do you get the value out of it? What it all looks like. Ellen, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. You got me all charged up. I'm excited now to show it from a tactical perspective and some ideas on how to tackle this ultimately monster problem, just like your slides, and some of those slides are monster slides. We're not saying this is an easy problem, but we are saying it's a conquerable problem. And the way you do that is by taking it one step at a time and dissect it into pieces, as Diane has done. When I first became a fanboy of Diane back in 2009, and I really just had come from a background where I had consulted and contracted for many years, and I was always getting thrust into different companies with so many systems. We had silos then, and we have silos now. The problem is only exacerbated with the cloud technologies that are all upon us now. It's a love and a hate situation. But the problem has never gone away. And back in 2009, Diane was talking about this, and I just thought there should be a simpler, easier, holistic way to do this. So the idea was making integration problem as well as the user experience simpler. So I will go through Aloha, which is a platform our firm is working on very actively and are targeting a release that is imminent. Why is it perfect time? Some of the things I touched on already. Legacy techs, we all have them in our large companies and our small companies sometimes. And they're creating a lot of uncertainty in terms of planning from an IT perspective as well as cultural. It's a technology issue, it's a cultural issue. We have shadow IT coming in the back door. Sometimes that's a bad word, but the people that are buying the extra SaaS services that need it today and now and do not have to get in line with IT are very happy. They're productive in one day. And I personally agree that cloud has changed my world, and I know it's changed most people that are listening's world. We love it, except for sometimes the integration aspects. Federated search, long time problem. Now that I have all these systems, now that I have all this data all over the place, and I have some competitive products, I now can't find it. And I also want to subscribe to certain things, and I don't want things that I don't want to subscribe to pushed to me. The best thing about cloud is, as we know, is it brought down costs on a lot of things, but that's not to say that I can just ditch all the existing things where all my data has been accumulating for 5-10 years. I can't. I need to be able to work with both and sometimes have hybrid environments. At the end of the day, though, sometimes we have too many processes in our organizations, and we start wondering, is this process useful, or did I just get kind of into a pattern that maybe isn't productive? There's productive patterns, there's non-productive patterns, and the tools and culture of the company is what steers us. And so use case-driven analysis to improve this in your intranets, of course, improves the intranet versus a static intranet. Mobile apps, I don't think I need to tell anyone the merits of mobile usage. And finally, microservices and Docker, which is current technologies to allow IT and development and continuous integration to move much faster. I have given you a very big overview right now. I'm going to dive in deeper. As Diane touched on, there's a lot of reasons why we're doing this. The problem's growing. We need to make decisions faster, and we need to make decisions based on accurate information, not wrong information. 42% of people have come back through some surveys that have been put out in the last couple of years that are making wrong decisions based on bad data. We're wasting time on inefficient processes. We constantly, as I mentioned, about looking for our data amongst all the different systems, we waste time on that. And how many on this call have been frustrated trying to find some document that you know it's out there and you're on your intranet, and where did it get put? I don't think there's anyone that's listening that has not encountered some of those frustrations. Also, with the world growing out with cloud, it has opened up the barriers between our company and our suppliers, our partners, and people that are working with our company, and also that bring good value. And if we don't collaborate well with them, and we don't collaborate well with ourselves internally, how can we collaborate well with the external? We need to break down that, and CEOs are really putting an emphasis on that and asking their CIOs to, as well as their IT departments, to clean it up, get it smoother. This is 2018. We should be able to work and collaborate and communicate and integrate better. And finally, that all goes down into the culture of how the organizations work and change and evolve. So what matters? At a product level, at a tactical level, what I'm showing here are some of the things I've touched on. And from a product perspective, we need to be able to have a system that allows us to have all these capabilities. We need it to be modern. We need to have a user experience that is not dated, and our integrations need to just work. We need to be able to scale our spaces, our portals, our users, and I don't want to run into barriers on that. I want to have use cases that are specific, but I also want to have the flexibility to do a use case layout on the fly. And I want to be able to build that space. And if I find one that is unique to my company, I want to be able to save out that use case layout that I created as a blueprint so I can repeat it in our organization. Let's talk about content services, which is a very big thing, an area in the industry right now. LinkedIn, Quora, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. You are using content services every day. Every single notification that comes to you from some store you bought from last week, maybe eBay, is a content service sending back you information. Content services is a very large and wide area. And companies, ironically, do not have that content services mechanisms as controlled in their own company. They're great at pushing it to their customers. How about organizationally, internally? How about communicating amongst your peers that way? Engagement services is very similar. We want to be able to do it in a systematic fashion where it can be automated. Internal, external, I talked about partners and suppliers. Mobile ready, it's not optional anymore. This is a requirement in any system that's modern. Federated faceted search. Faceted means being able to tag the different content data and information automatically in a way that can be analyzed later with artificial intelligence to come up with analytics, come up with trends, come up with personalization and relevance where it applies to you as a human or you as a department or you as an organization or you as a partner, all the different flavors. And I want it to be secure with my group management, and I want it to be extensible longer term. Once I get into this platform, I want to be able to know that as I grow and morph as a company, so also will my system be able to morph with me. That is both at a development level, but it's also the flexibility of the design of the system. I touched on a couple other things before, microservices and hybrid. I'm not going to go through this because I just stated it, but for you, when you download our slides, I hope, it dives a little bit deeper in terms of the types of capabilities that are all inclusive in the Aloha platform that we're releasing. I'm going to dive a little deeper on these. Modern tech. I think we have an audience here that they're going to identify with some of the logos that I'm showing. I don't show them all. There's many different techs we use to build Aloha. But at the base and at the root of it, it's a microservices model architecture that is flexible. It is SaaS-based and multi-tenant for the cloud deployments, but it also can be Dockerized with Docker and Kubernetes to be deployed out to an on-prem. So an on-prem can also have a local multi-tenant environment if, for example, a large conglomerate company that wanted to have a multi-tenant environment and split out many portals out to their constituents and companies. It has to, again, work with any device. And I want to be able to have support cloud and on-premises or both. And don't make me pick. It's 2018. I should be able to have the know-how as well as the technology to be able to support these modern ideas. As Diane showed in that very deep slide, this raises it up a little bit in a little simpler fashion where I just highlight a number of different business processes. Probably the folks that are listening, you can identify with many of these processes. It's all through back-end implementation, and I can't see what's happening in terms of the communication of my systems. I also don't see the KPIs, I don't see the analytics, I don't see the results, I don't see the business value that I'm getting out of the data and the apps that I'm using. By surfacing the data up, by surfacing the apps up into a single environment, we can get that visibility, and that visibility cuts across all levels, left to right and up and down in the organization. At a user experience level, I want to create these use cases for my different projects, my departments, my conglomerate, my subsidiaries, and the different processes within those organizations. As you can imagine, the topologies can be simple and they can be complex, and they get broken down into different ways. And you share that data in the UI based on the use cases, layouts, blueprints that you end up creating in Aloha. With that, you're doing it with the integrated systems that just work, and they're trusted, and they're secure. They're secure at not only a vendor trust level by experience, but they're also proof of concept. They're trusted based on the data security trust. They're encrypted. They're configurable, so I can configure the different apps based on the context of my processes. The workflows also are configurable. Since all the data is accessible in a single interface, I can also run different intelligence on the data. I can surface up that as well. I have a lot of flexibility for this engaging environment. And then from that, all that content and data becomes, again, that content services piece. It all is usable data that can be reused in another fashion to send out notifications, to send out communications to the organization based on the setup that you get in your organization. These are all the things that you think through in trying to get it to work in a cohesive way. You break it down into pieces, then you build it up, then you break it down, then you build it up. Let's look at the different types of systems. I won't list these off. You can all look at that and see it. These are just some of many systems you have running in your organization. Honestly, there's hundreds. When you have access to the integration layer as well as the presentation layer, you can have actionable integrations that based on this system, it can change a value in another system in a real-time fashion. And that can all be done in the Aloha platform. I'm going to go through this quite quickly. Again, that content and engagement services. The idea is about curating it, about microblogging, which creates a whole bunch of data. And I want to aggregate it from both the systems. I want to aggregate it from the systems as well as the users that are putting the microblogs in the system, or collaboration systems that they might also be feeding. Again, I want my search to work in a harmonious way across all that content. Of course, because I have the users engaging like that, now each user's profiles are elevated, and now we can analyze the different attention that certain profiles are getting, the different expertise that they're showing, both by their actions as well as their tagging that they have in their organization. That leads to the analytics, notifications, alerts, and briefings. So you can see how everything kind of bounces off each other and feeds each other as well as gets consumed by each other, and collectively it becomes a powerful story. Again, getting on top of that content is the key to that. You don't have to move the content to do that. You just need to be able to access it and be able to impact it. And if you can bring all the system data in, plus some of the web content like Google content, as well as social media, as well as subscribed content that you pay lots of dollars for. A lot of organizations are paying a lot of money for sophisticated content on a regular feed, but it's a per person subscription often versus a community subscription. And then the community subscription is per system versus via many. So you want to get the many to many, both many of consuming it into Aloha and then being able to distribute it out to the organization in a filtered and controlled way. When we put additional services on top of that to analyze that data, all the kinds of data, we get yet again another level of content aggregation as well as trending and analysis that we're able to do. End of the day, there's one thing that is bringing it all together: the front end system with the seamless integration in a secure and safe way. Here's an example of some faceted federated search data, just as a quick look. And of course, as I've been mentioning, you get the analytics and business value, and this can extend. It's an ongoing run because the more data you feed, the more analysis you can do, and you can keep going on that. And again, I've talked about mobile. Mobile is not an afterthought. I will say it once, I'll say it a million times. It's not an afterthought. Any system that does not have mobile ready, out to shoot, and is responsive is not a system you should even talk to. In our development efforts, we are testing and reviewing mobile on a daily basis in development. All of our development is done where it's done for both desktop as well as mobile at the same time. This is an example of some extensive integrations we've done. These are ones that we have been tuning for the last almost 8 years. AppFusions started in April of 2010, and we have just been polishing, and extending our use cases further and further and further for different systems. And then we repurpose them and use them. As you can see, these are quite extensive, and same thing with Aloha. And over to you, Dion. I went quite fast. I hope you can go from here.
Absolutely. So to bring this all together, to apply it to your business, the process that we're seeing used more and more, and one of which we use in our practice, is one known as design thinking, which is having empathy for the problems that our workers are having in applying the digital workplace tools that we're giving them. We're seeing a common set of pain points in most organizations, that applications are either too hard to locate or to use in their work. The data and the work processes are often out of context, and that the user has to keep it all in their head, has to figure out what they should be doing next, remember all the different steps in the process, which application, which documents everything is in, where to find things, and hopefully even have access to that information. They can't find information quickly because they have to search multiple systems, and when they do find information, it's usually just a piece of the story. It's not the whole work process, it's not the whole conversation, it's not the end-to-end view of what they were doing. And so they end up doing manual integration, which is another pain point, in that the data quickly gets out of sync. It's not uncommon to see dozens of copies of a file, and no one knows what the official sales report is anymore, because everything's been shared over and over and over again in different places, instead of looking at the actual system that that information is in, being exposed right through their portal or their enterprise social network. And the tools just don't support their job functions in any specific way. They're very generic, and people have to figure out how to do that, especially as businesses become more high turnover environments. Is all becoming a challenge. And so most organizations have what we call today an accidental digital workplace, a conglomeration of tools that haven't been well thought about how they work together, what they should be doing, and how they enable workers and remove barriers to getting their job done. And we take those pain points, we take what they have today, and we say, let's go ahead and understand the challenges in carrying out their common activities. Let's create potential solutions. Let's prototype and validate them. Let's make sure that they actually do solve these problems with the applications the organization has, and focuses on outcomes. So it's all about people in the end. If we don't design this for the workers and the work that they're doing, then the results that we want don't happen. Another way of focusing on this is just getting into the issues at hand and having these, what we call design session workshops. So we get the stakeholders in the room, the representative workers in the organization. From that information, we take the overall needs of the organization and develop a digital workplace strategy, integrate the solutions, and make sure that the applications are being brought together and integrated in a sensible fashion. Conduct some pilots, learn from them, improve them until we all agree that the situation is better, that we have a more effective digital workplace. But there is enormous value in removing the friction, aiming at the highest value activities in the organization, putting less load on the workers, being more personalized and contextual. The value proposition is pretty straightforward. So where can you learn more about this? This is an unfolding industry story. Ellen and myself, we talk about this all the time online on Twitter. You can follow the specific conversation by looking up common hashtags, digital workplace, for the whole conversation about digital workplace. Aloha DW for conversations about the specific platform. And then, of course, ESN for enterprise social networks. We encourage you to look at that. Lots of content on YouTube, and we'll be all over the place in North America and Europe in the coming months. I'd love to stop by and show you how all of this works and potentially work on those design sessions. Ellen, what do you have to add to this?
Thanks. And I think that kind of sums it up. The reason Dion and I both are so passionate on this space is because this is not something that came about in 2018. As I mentioned, I started following Dion way back in 2009. It was a number of years later. At that time, they were talking about culture versus technology, and it was like the culture versus technology wars. And over time, I think it became clear that it's both. It's a technology issue and a culture issue, and it's not an easy issue to solve. But it all starts with thinking of your current day, how do you get work done right now, and how many systems and browsers and data points do you access, and how many browsers do you have open right now, I'd ask. We all fall prey to this problem, and it all can be done a little bit better with a holistic strategy. Okay, that finishes our formal presentation. And at this point, we'd like to know if there's any questions. Please throw them out there and let us help you out with your questions. Over to you, Vance.
Ellen, Diane, thanks very much for a great session. Wow, what a whirlwind tour of what I think many folks can identify readily with, that there are many opportunities and maybe even some complex challenges that remain out there to get the data and all sorts of content right to the people that could use it and get the most value from it the most. A really great look at what I think is going to be a growing need here in 2018. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Vance.
Absolutely. You know, guys, just to get a top-level vision of what AppFusion is doing with its digital workplace platform, Diane, I believe you talked about the accidental digital workplace, and I think a lot of people can identify with these sort of spot integration, very tactical, hey, can you do this when you have time sort of thing. I wonder if you could talk about not only the IT side, but the business side of when they kind of cross the chasm and get to that point where one-off integrations just aren't doing it anymore, and they need a more platform approach, and how AppFusions can level that complexity.
Sure. Well, I mean, we see the business side usually feels a lot of pain, but they aren't aware of what IT is capable of today in addressing that challenge. So a typical example might be the sales team collaborating on a contract or an RFP or proposal, whatever it is, and using email, and they're using Microsoft Office documents, and they're assembling all of this information together and emailing it around, and multiple people are editing the Word document, and then they realize they can't bring it all together. The conversation's fragmented in dozens of email conversations, and so there's no context there. And then there might be integration with the CRM system or more information there that, again, is kept separate, an entirely separate system artificially from the actual process that's going on. Let's assemble this experience in an environment you're already working in. Let's make the apps appear so that people can see the actual live data, live records in their activity stream in the middle of the conversation, jump in, work together on it. Everyone can see the conversation that led up to it. Everyone can see the output of that in whatever documents and other systems like the CRM system, right in the flow. And then they can continue talking about what they did. And everyone can see the process as a straightforward one. And there might even be some structure to that. It says, okay, here's the standard way we do a contract. You can vary it if you need to, but we're going to guide you through the process. So step one is make sure there's an opportunity in your CRM system for this. Then here's a proposal template. So you work through and you present the process in a linear, straightforward, understandable fashion, but it's participatory. Anyone can jump in and work on that using the tools, and they're guided in the right direction. When you present it like that to the business people, they go, yes, I understand. And IT has a vocabulary and a way of saying, we're going to address it. We're going to remove the complexity. So you don't have to spend so much time training. You can just say, I want to kick off a proposal process, or I want to kick off a project management process. And the right applications are connected together inside your digital workplace hub.
It's not just about pushing data down the pipe. It's about being able to have a connected, intelligent communication. And I also believed in real time. Data gets stale really quickly. And so as an organization, we were always trying to address the real-time data, real-time doc, real-time update scenario. The different technologies like microservices and Dockerizing and Kubernetes are allowing for the continuous integration and development and deployments.
It's a great conversation, because here's a question that actually goes to that next step of where do I start, so to speak. And it reads, I love that you guys have made some attention on use cases, or what you call integrated experiences, because we frankly don't always get visibility into what the business thinks they need. Tell me a little bit about how we would begin to use Aloha and what starter projects are already included.
I am a real believer about patternizing things as best as possible, but I also am a believer with customers to give them satisfaction as quickly as possible, let them touch and feel as quickly as possible. We have platforms where we can turn on the existing integrations that we have right now the next day. Honestly, it's within minutes. So it's not next day, but depending on what you want to do. But the amount of technology and integration experience and user experience and UI development and business logic and single sign-on, the whole 9 yards that you get in that solution, and we could turn on 10 if you want, if you had all those different systems, and we also have the mechanism to do it with our dummy data, is years and years and years of built-in experience. And ultimately, in the picture of long-term IT, we're talking days or weeks, and an RFP that normally would take 6 months to get through can be implemented in your lab within days. And so our approach of packaging things allows us to do things in bite sizes and slowly compound and build on each other. And that's how you build integrated digital workplaces. You also want to be able to have it all configurable at the front end. So the end user, there's different levels of configuration for the different types of operators of the service. So you'll have the end user who may have very minimal configurable capabilities, but the organization will be able to configure it. Now, once you can do that, it might look customized to the end company using it or the end users, but really it was a pattern that was replicated across many companies based on the configuration management. And also permissions, of course. There's also a whole bunch of thing around security and permissions.
You know, it's a fantastic tour that you just gave us there, Ellen, and so many ways to engage, so many touch points here for both IT and business. Can you suggest some ways where our attendees can maybe go hands-on, take a trial, guided demo? What's the best step to get more info on Aloha?
Yeah, so we're moving quite fast on that. Starting February, we're going to be having handheld beta releases, and we're moving out with a large launch at Think in middle of the March. To say it really simply, info@appfusions.com. It's an email, but it actually goes into our support system, and it also is a sales and support system. So we do watch it daily, 24/7, and just get in touch and start the conversation.
Fantastic, fantastic. Diane Hinchcliffe and Ellen Feeney, thanks very much for a really eye-opening look at a new way to tackle an old problem and perhaps a persisting problem with the emergence of the digital workplace and getting workers to get to the data and the apps they need quicker and have much better outcomes for the business. A really thought-provoking session.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And as we love to do here at the Enterprise Integration Summit, Ellen and Diane mentioned, we've got some resources here in the breakout room. Here's a slide that'll get you in touch with some other resources at AppFusions, including the info@ email address. Just click on that. The link will be live when you download the slides. Thanks very much.